future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Hi guys, this is Sunny Chayes, and you are with me today on Singing in the Rain, with always the tagline, The Power of One. Today we have, I'm just going to get right to it, we have Marianne Williamson on. I mean, there's a reason that she's our international treasure. I'm glad that we have applause already over me. Woo! Thank you. I mean, she is a luminary among luminaries. She is traveling all over the world doing the most incredible things, speaking, inspiring, bringing love, breaking stuff open, myth busting, incredible books, ran for Congress, Renaissance woman, and now we are going to be talking about Aphrodite and digging in about why it is that in some cases, and I have to say personally, I feel this way too, there's a disconnect with love, power, making it happen, rocking it, and being in a relationship that really works. So let's just bring on Marianne and let's get to it. I know we already had applause, but I'm going to applaud again because you're worth a lot of applause.
Thank you.
So Aphrodite, I'll let you jump right in and say, why are we doing Aphrodite?
Well, you just said it. And I think that for many of us, this has almost been a shameful secret. We thought it was just us. Or even if we didn't think it was just us, we were still reticent to talk about some of it. And I saw in my own life a particularly I saw something sharply in focus, which was that as my career became more successful, my intimate relationships became less successful. And I didn't know what that was. Why had the spigot dried up? What happened? And people would tell me things like men having a problem with women who were successful and so forth. But I knew that something else was going on. I just didn't know what it was. And I'm, as you know, a committed student of A Course in Miracles. And also back in the 1990s, I started attending very religiously Pat Allen lectures. And that woman changed my life because she definitely gave me principles. She teaches principles that made all the difference in how I related to men. But still, it's been a real journey, that integration of the spiritual and the romantic, as it were. I think that many women, like myself, baby boomers, having been so influenced by the feminism of the 1970s, and proud of it and very celebratory towards it, still feel that there was a little bit of not just a little bit, there was a flawed strain of feminism by which many of us suppressed the feminine in the name of feminism. And so we went into the over-masculinized way of being. You know, an image that's always come to my mind, Sonny, is I feel like we had to claw our way into certain rooms that younger women don't realize. We had to claw our way, just like generations before us did. But the image I always got was that my fingernails turned into claws. And then once I got into the room and it was time to take my claws off, they had become cemented to my fingernails.
Yes.
And so once you'd become that masculinized person, and you said, oh, I really don't need to be this anymore, many of these mannerisms and behavioral traits have become entrenched. So I found in my own life that this has been a real journey. I thought for a long time that generations after me had self-corrected on this, that these younger women, because they felt they could have it all, had sort of self-corrected, and some of these problems did not apply to them. I have seen in the last few years that this is not true. That in some ways the wounds are so deep in them, even worse in some cases. So that's why I thought enough has come together inside me, and I've seen enough happening in so many other people and in their relationships that I thought we need to have a serious talk about this, and hopefully some things that I've been through and that I've learned from failure as well as success, and from just the maturation process might be of use to others. So that's what that weekend is for, the Aphrodite training.
Wow. And that is going to be, let's just say right now, it's October
23rd through 25th here in Los Angeles, starting Friday night, all day and night Saturday until around 6 p.m. on Sunday. But it's also live streamed.
Oh,
So, and
fantastic.
if you're there at all, live streamed or in attendance, you have the live stream permanently.
Oh,
So.
beautiful. Well, I want you to know that, as you know, I always research and do a lot before a show.
Yes,
and
you
so
do.
I was reading Joseph Campbell, I was reading, many different things. And then I realized what I really needed to do for this interview and to prepare for this weekend was to go into my own mythology.
That's right.
About what's up with me and what's happening with me, and and what are the stories I tell myself. And I
Right.
realized that part of the thing for me is that I feel the same as you. Sort of the more I've grown, the more kind of intense I get. People consider me very feminine and yet pretty damn intense. I also feel that I have kind of a permanent broken heart because of what's going on in the world.
Right.
And doing my show and doing what I do, I'm constantly relearning or finding out about something else, just finding out about Turkey or watching the news today and seeing one woman being badly treated and millions being badly treated. I mean, I just literally have a semi-broken heart all the time.
Right.
So that is hard. It's hard. And then to think, okay, and now I'm going to put myself out and be vulnerable. Like, it makes me kind of choke up even right now saying to you.
Right.
To then open my heart up and risk, having my heart broken even more is scary for me. And I kind of feel like, well, I have to keep doing what I'm doing because I've signed up for a certain kind of mission in my life to do what I'm doing. And so it feels like that would get me off track. And I mean, yikes, it's like a big mess. And so getting here today, here I am, like, yikes.
There's a sacred quality to the permanent broken heart. I remember my mother telling me before I ever had a child, and I know you're a mother, my mother saying, once you're a mother, there's a potential for heartbreak every day of your life. So I think being a mother is one of the things. Watching the news at all is one of the things that makes you aware that life is fragile, that anything could happen on any given day, that we love so deeply that which theoretically could disappear in a flash. You see things that happen on this planet. But that doesn't make us any less feminine. That makes us actually... there's a feminine aspect to the permanent broken heart of humanity, both in men as well as in women. That idea that we recognize how close life and death are, that we recognize how fragile life is, and recognizing the fragility of life, if anything, makes you appreciate life even more deeply. And whether it is a permanent broken heart or what feels like a permanent broken heart because of the conditions of the world, or also as we have more experiences,
Yes.
we have more failures in our past, including at love. But to me, if you work through this spiritually, all it means is that every day, that which goes well is so much more deeply appreciated and embraced.
That's true.
Every love affair that goes well is that much more deeply embraced. Every time you see a child who is happy and a person and somewhere where forgiveness did occur and where healing did happen, that much more embraced and appreciated. So the permanent broken heart, this is what is metaphysically within the Christian tradition called the tears of Christ. I mean, if you look at the story of Buddha's enlightenment would not have begun had he not first gone across his father's walls and seen suffering for the first time. In Judaism, the suffering of the Jews when they left slavery in Egypt were led by Moses out of slavery but had to suffer for 40 years before they landed in the Promised Land. The suffering of Jesus on the cross. So it is part of the great spiritual context of all the great religious and spiritual systems that the human experience includes suffering. And that's what Buddha said, to this earth is filled with suffering. And the path of enlightenment is that detachment from the plane of suffering, while at the same time the bodhisattva makes him or herself available to the suffering. So that is the high point of humanity. If you have not recognized the suffering of the world yet, you're not there. If you do not make yourself available to the broken heart of the world, you're not there yet. But at the same time, if you do not also realize, because once again, the point is not just that Buddha recognized suffering, but that he became enlightened and detached from suffering. Jesus did suffer, but then he resurrected. The Jews did suffer from slavery in Egypt, but then they did reach the Promised Land. So it is that juxtaposition within us where, and you've heard me say this many times, if you're not grieving the state of the world, you're not looking. But if you're not also rejoicing in the possibilities of rebirth and miracles and the infinite possibilities for regreening and revitalization, you're also not yet a midwife for the possibilities of salvation. And that is is the point, that we are not only cradling the Pieta, the Mary cradling the body of her dead son. Not only are we bearing witness to the agony of the world at this time, it is equally our job to be midwives, to be pregnant with the possibilities to be the mothers of the new. And that applies to every aspect of our lives, that we are happy, but not happy out of ignorance or complacency or ditziness. We are happy because despite it all, we know that something else is possible. And that's the purpose of any experience we go through, particularly our intimate relationships.
Whoa. I mean, can we have applause after that? That was amazing. And thank you for saying that, because that really puts it all together in such a beautiful way. And I think one of the spiritual practices, one of the most difficult and simple spiritual practices is the feeling intently and the letting go, the having intense or intention about something. When people talk about the law of attraction or that sort of thing, having the intention for success in, let's say, our career or a relationship or just the day, this interview, for example, and then also letting it go, that tightrope that we walk. I don't know if that's a kind of an expression that I use or a feeling that I use, and just finding the navigation of that all the time. And it's beautiful when we're in that sweet spot. It is like nothing else, especially having the humility and the gratitude and the compassion that we have when we get to perhaps a certain age or after certain experiences, and being a mother and living on this planet, as you say, and getting to this place, so that all of that comes together and it does just make for something extremely rich.
Well, I'd like to submit a way of looking at that in which there's nothing to be navigated. The embryo doesn't have to navigate how to become a baby, and the acorn doesn't have to navigate how to become an oak tree, and the bud doesn't have to navigate how to become a blossom. The cells that emerge from the egg and the sperm, the ovum, and so forth, are imbued with a natural intelligence by which they become brain and become heart and lungs and so forth. So the issue with intention is to surrender it to the larger intentionality of the natural order of things, whether you call it God or whatever you call it, the native intelligence of the universe. So if your intention is, one way to put it, to quote-unquote serve God, which simply means, if you say, from a metaphysical perspective, if you say, may God's will be done, it's to say, may loving thought prevail. Mm-hmm. And then you rest, and this goes back to the feminine. You don't have an intention that you're trying to make it happen, so there's nothing to navigate. You are actually asking that the larger intention of the universe be served by this interview or by anything else, and then you rest in joy and enjoy it. And that's actually the sweet spot. Mm-hmm. To enjoy yourself within the larger devotion that something higher than yourself be served. In nature, when those cells emerge, they are then led to collaborate with other cells for the healthy functioning of the whole. That's what relationships are. You and I are a perfect example. We have always had that recognition, and everything you and I have ever done has always been in collaborative service to some higher thing that you were doing or I were doing or we were doing. True. And so then we're not efforting, we're enjoying each other because we are in, that is the sweet spot. So in that sweet spot, there's no strategizing or navigation. There's, I've got these resources, hey, let's play.
I like that. So I'm going to use another word then, clarity. So in the world where we're living, we have so many choices and everything. Being clear, and then letting go.
But the being clear, if you
or getting clear somehow.
But the difference from a perspective of a book like The Course is differentiating between magic and miracles. Mm-hmm. Because magic is still where you're efforting to make happen what you think should happen. And even then, clarity can be used in the hands of the ego, which is I have an intention that this happen. Now, if you look at the human body and you look at the cells in the body and the cells collaborating with other cells to serve the healthy functioning of the whole, every once in a while, for reasons that we do not totally understand, a cell disconnects from its natural intelligence. It disconnects from the collaborative matrix and just wants to do what it wants to do. That's called cancer. Mm-hmm. It's a malignancy in the body, and it's a malignancy in consciousness. So you can dress it up with all kinds of faux spirituality, but it's still you doing what you want to do and asking the universe to be your errand boy. Miracles and spiritual surrender is where you ask love what you could do for it. So it's the clarity turns into devotion, into surrender. May whatever I say and whatever I do be of use to something bigger than myself. And then that's the ultimate clarity with a capital C, because you're not even intending that it be anything other than used by love for love's purposes. The reason this is so significant in practical terms is because you and I, if we come into this interview, let's say, and it is an art form. This is where your navigation is correct. It's like acting. Once rehearsal is over, and the curtain comes up, then you need to just be in that spontaneous place. That's the difference between good acting and bad acting. So you've done your homework. I've done my homework. You've read all these books and prepared who you are as a woman. Same with me. Then once we go into a situation, it's very zen, empty rice bowl, beginner's mind, because you and I can't actually know with our mortal mind what we might say that would hit somebody in a way that was an aha moment.
That's right.
We can't navigate that. We can't strategize that. So that once we've done our homework and prepared and know that we are as women and as professionals, now we're just supposed to enjoy the process.
Yes.
Because anything else is actually limiting the possibilities and not serving them.
Well, thank you for pointing that out, because as you know, this is sort of how this show goes. I mean, it's so much preparation, and then it just all sort of sits here, and then we just play.
Exactly.
And
That's
whatever
why you're
goes
great
on.
at what you do.
Thank you. And I never know what you're going to say, but it's always something amazingly brilliant.
And there's always a feeling we can play.
I feel like I'm playing with a really good tennis player
Right
when I
back
play
at
with
you,
you.
sweetie. Thank you. Right back at you.
Thank you. It's like, one thing I, for some reason, Oprah came to my mind when you were speaking, because I know you've really, well, I'll just let you speak about how you and Oprah have played in the conversation of relationship.
Well, she has, I have eternal gratitude to Oprah. She really gave me, my career nationally and internationally. I mean, when she put a Return to Love on the Oprah show, that really changed the trajectory of my life and my
many
career
others in
many
reading it.
ways. So I'm extremely grateful to her. I think on the topic of relationships, she remains rather private. I mean, she on her show, she certainly talks about Stedman and talks about the fact that they are together, but I would not feel comfortable talking about anything that she doesn't talk about publicly. Obviously.
Right. And I'm not specifically meaning that. I just mean sort of in her show, the beautiful, I mean, she's asked you to share your love and your wisdom and your feminine brilliance about relationships. So I just thought, for some reason, it's like, well, Oprah, help me out.
Well, I don't know if there's really an Oprah connection to this particularly, but I think the idea of merging the spiritual with every other aspect of our lives is certainly something that Oprah has expressed on her show. Interesting. You know, we're living at a time when it comes to intimate relationships where there's a lot of people will say to you things like, well, what is it you're looking for? And as a matter of fact, you don't by any chance have a Return to Love here, do you?
You know, I have it in the car.
You know, because there's I was doing an
have it around me all the time.
online course on it the other day, and there's a whole section on page 119. Even though I wrote the book, it was like a brick to my forehead reading it, and it had to do with how, in fact, this is something I'm going to be talking about in my lecture tonight. We have agendas for, and this goes back to what we were talking about before about intention. And when you have an agenda for another person, then you're trying to fit the person into your agenda. And that's not love. Love is this aspect of deep acceptance. You know, radical self-acceptance and radical acceptance of other people. That's the spiritual connection. I think in terms of what the Aphrodite training is about, it's about knowing that it's not enough to seek to love other people. We want to love other people in a way that feels like love to them. And for me, as an over-masculinized woman, when I am in that over-masculinized place, I am in my masculine, because that's what women, we go to work, and you're in this masculine mode. The masculine is the generator. The masculine is the giver. You're the director of the show. You're deciding what's going to happen. You're the decider. But you and I both found, and I think many of women have found, that same psychological and emotional mode that works at work does not necessarily work in love. If, in fact, we are heterosexual women who want to be the feminine partner in a relationship with a man. And so one of the things Pat Allen talked about that I used to hear her say and I thought was so profound is she talked about how it takes a woman 30 minutes to transition at the end of a day where we've been at work and we've been in this masculine mode. How do we transition? And how it actually takes 30 minutes. And I call it goddess time. And it's the time for yoga, and it's the time for a bubble bath, and it's the time for meditation, and it's the time to light the candles, and it's the time for soft music, and it's the time to get the clutter out of your bedroom, and to get the computer out of your bedroom, and to get the people who work at your apartment or your house out of your house because you're claiming it for the space of the feminine.
Yes.
And this affects you emotionally, and it affects you psychologically, and it affects you spiritually. And this is what the Aphrodite training is about the external and the internal processes we have to go through. I wrote a blog called Honoring Athena, Embracing Aphrodite, with feminism, with so much of the externalized form. And what we're talking about here is a holistic feminism, expanding feminism, not disavowing feminism, expanding it to include more of the internal, the emotional, the psychological powers as well of the divine feminine. So the idea of Athena, she's the goddess of war, she's the goddess of manifestation, and we have embodied her. You can be who, in terms of the gods and goddesses, you can be whoever you choose to embody, and you can have in life whatever you choose to be. So a lot of us have embodied her. I mean, we went out there, we do it. But she's a virgin goddess. She's a desexualized goddess. Now, the goddesses are all sisters. You can embody as many as you wish, but you do have to manage your time, and you do have to have some boundaries in there. So what I found in my life, and what I think many women have found, was we embody Aphrodite, we embody Athena, but we had allowed the musculature of Aphrodite to wither away. And Aphrodite is the goddess of love, and the goddess of intimacy, and the goddess of sex, and the goddess of romance. Now, this didn't make us not want her. In fact, we were bereft when we didn't have her, but because we had stopped embodying her, because the temple, and that's the powerful thing about these are goddesses. They come out of a spiritual vortex. When you see a Greek temple, you have to walk up the steps. The pillars have to be there. She has to be treated with reverence and approached with reverence, or she does not show up. And that's what the Aphrodite training is about. Have you really built a temple to Athena within your psyche, within your house, within your apartment? Because if your bedroom is this masculine place filled with exercise equipment and computer technology and all of that, don't expect Aphrodite to emerge there, because she is an erotic temple. And so then this makes us, and then this really sets us up for failure, because this makes us more desperate for her, because it's a big piece of why we incarnated this lifetime as women missing. And so we are desperate for it in sexual relationships and relationships with men, which then we continue to sabotage if she does not already live within us, because if she's not living within us, men don't see the signal. Why would they want to come?
Yes, exactly.
And we're thinking, oh no, just come and I promise late at night she'll come out.
Right.
Well, but then she's not beaming during the day.
No.
So they're not calling.
Or it's like, it's such
This
mixed
sounds
messages.
easy, but I work.
Well, I mean,
Lot
and
of
of course,
tears went into
Aphrodite
those
coming
realizations.
out of the sea foam in a shell.
That's right.
You know, one
hello,
of the-
hello, she arises out of the water. She arises out of the wet. Hello. How much clearer did they have to be?
Exactly. And the other thing with Aphrodite is she has many names. So
Sure, the Greeks and the Romans. And all
right, and so it's sort of as with us. We have many. I mean, we have many. I think we have many stories. We have many.
And her most important name is yours.
Right.
The most important is your name. And as far as that sea foam, that not only is the sexuality of the woman who is wet or the man and the semen, but it's also, of course, the subconscious waters. She comes out of the right side of the brain.
And the
She comes out of the
creativity, and of
waters,
course,
right.
one of the
Right.
most beautiful elements ever is water and the ocean and
Yes,
like
of
that.
course.
And Botticelli painting that, one of my
Right.
favorite
She's
paintings.
on the shell and she's
Yes,
looking
and-
modest, but she's sexual and she's
but
naked.
she's just.
Pretty perfect.
I have a. yeah,
I never understood what she was blonde.
I have a question that I think about a lot. We have conversations with my women friends and men friends about kind of the caveman, cave women, or the what is really natural. Having two sons, I had this element of when my, fixing it. When my sons would come home from school, and if they were having a bad day, I would just be like, well, what's up? What's up? And my older son would say, like, give me a minute. And he would go into his bedroom, also known as cave, and close the door. And I'm like knocking on the door, and I'm like, can I bring you cookies? What's going on? Are you doing your home? Mom. And then the more I got that energy, the more I felt like I had to fix it, until I read a few books about how it all rolls. And then it's like, back off.
Especially once they're at puberty. You only coddle the feelings of a boy, not a man. And once they reach puberty, they have a natural inclination, and you should too, to let them go and to respect their thoughts and not ask them how they feel, but ask them what they think and what they're going to do.
Well, and then also just letting people, like you were saying, having 30 minutes coming home, allowing people to sort of meet in common ground.
Well, in that case, you're
area.
the one who needs the goddess time, so
Exactly.
that you're not in that what can I do mode,
Right.
but rather in that magnetic space where with your son or with a lover or with a husband, he'll come to you because in his own time, because he can feel that magnetic quality that emanates from you.
Actually, you were talking about the puberty, and I was thinking about a little boy that a friend of mine has who's 4 years old, and he just has a brand new little sister, so he's kind of going through some things, and he normally is really excited to see me, but the last couple of times he's been a little more like. So what I did was I just kind of cruised in, sat down on the floor, started playing with Brio, just like, doing my thing with the Brio, and then he sort of came over, he's like,
Yeah.
oh, what are you building over there? I'm like, I'm doing my thing.
Yeah, he's
And
a
then,
little man already. That's a dude.
And then
4-year-old dude.
he was just right with me. But I just really felt that energy of, on one hand, just kind of doing my thing, giving him total space, also doing something that was fairly interesting. It wasn't like I was doing cut-out paper
That's
doll.
interesting, actually.
Right?
That's an interesting part of it.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the
So it was
issue.
a little
that-
enticing without pushing it on him.
He's 4 years old, but then the question is, what about if he's 40 years old? And the equivalent of that is do not text.
Right.
Do not send that email. Do not pick up that phone. Learning how to sit on your credit card and bite your tongue. Just don't do it. And that's what it means to remain in the feminine, because the feminine is the being and the masculine is the doing.
And the
They will
receiving.
come to you if you're an interesting woman. And it's another interesting thing that you say about you doing something interesting. I was reading a book once about Jenny Churchill, who was Winston Churchill's mother, who was a fascinating woman who was an American, actually. And they had a fascinating relationship. And she, in another age, she would have been running for prime minister. But at that time, her power was, number one, preparing Winston to be prime minister, and she was the lover of many fascinating men, including the Prince of Wales at that time. And one of the things I realized, because I love to read biographies, I love reading biographies. I love to see how real people lived in certain ages, and that's how my brain really takes in. Oh, that's what that age was about. And in former times, and this is interesting, it's ironic, but there was a time before we were allowed so much space out in the world where women were famous for being fascinating. They were famous for being fascinating. They were famous for having dinner parties where there was such fascinating conversation and she could keep up. And the way they then, like I said, she was the Prince of Wales lover, or she was. So I think it's so interesting because it's a place where we've gone to imbalance. And we have conspired with it because many of us became what Jung would call the father's daughter. I definitely was of that. I definitely, the Course in Miracles says, beware the danger of an unrecognized belief. My unrecognized belief was that if I do enough, if I achieve enough, I will be loved. Doing and achieving is not what makes a man love you.
Yes, being a home entertainment center is not all it's cracked up to be.
That's right. So the idea that you are genuinely interesting and you are that space of possibility.
And interested.
And big one.
Yeah.
So that's a way we show respect for a man's thoughts. Once again, Pat Allen, I remember when she said a man's greatest psychic craving is that his thoughts be respected, and a woman's greatest psychic craving is that her feelings be cherished. I've never forgotten, there were just a few principles from her that it changed everything for me with men. When you really start in an intimate relationship, saying less I think and more I feel, and saying to him less how do you feel and more what do you think, because mothers coddle the feelings of their son, and a man is programmed to lose his erection around his mother. So if you quote unquote take care of a man's feelings too much, like it's why your sons were healthy to reject it. He didn't want you coddling his feelings when he got home from school. He was already an adolescent. He was already trying to emerge into his manhood. And I think it's a mother's role. You know, I've been in a relationship with someone whose mother, God bless her, would not break that umbilical cord. And of course it's his job to do it himself now, but it was interesting because I think a mother's role in a man's life is to prepare him to be a good husband.
Yes, absolutely.
And that means preparing him to respect women.
Yes.
And I think some women play a very diabolical game of keep me as number one.
Well, I'm really amazed, grateful, relieved, and thrilled that both of my sons have beautiful, lovely girlfriends who
You should take credit for a lot of that.
Well, thank you. What's really funny, too, is they used to kind of tease me because we all know I'm an environmentalist, this or that, and my kids used to tease me and call me hippie and Mom, you care so much about the Africans and what are we having for dinner and all this sort of thing. But now they both have very, very socially active girlfriends.
Yeah, well, that's a great accolade to you. That's a great
I'm
accolade.
just thrilled. But what I'm also really glad about is I really, really watch how they are with them.
That's right. And
And
you
they're
monitor. And
very-
if they don't treat that woman with respect, I'm sure you're the first person to say, excuse me.
Let them walk through the door first. I know it sounds like a little thing, but my kids are really tall, too. And I say, when you walk through a door first and then the girl walks behind, I'm just telling
And
you
open the
that
door for
little
her.
thing, all of that. I said, it's just such a little thing. And my sons even said, oh, she doesn't mind. I'm like, guess what?
She does.
She does. And, it turned out, yes, she did.
And
then
also
they-
to talk about
like-
why that is, because some women, particularly younger women, could be listening to this interview and thinking you and I are two of the most retro women they've ever heard.
Yes.
And we are totally, awful and non
From another century.
Right. So let's, which we are actually, but but that's not all bad. Let's talk about
But
why
again, the
that.
caveman, cavewoman thing. This is in our DNA, I
Well,
think.
it's in our
yes?
DNA, but also our nervous system. So let's
Yes.
talk about why you say to the man, let the woman walk first. Let's talk about why you say to the man, open the car door. Some men these days are as scarred as we are. The women, we're afraid to be feminine because we're afraid we'll be deemed weak. But some men are afraid to be masculine because they're afraid they'll be deemed macho. So some men, they tell the stories that, well, I opened a car door for a woman and she said, I can open it for myself. The point is, yeah, really. So the point is not that the woman can't open it for herself. Of course you can open it for yourself. Of course you can open the door for yourself. But
Pull the chair out, all of that.
Yes, but where you put yourself in your nervous system, where you relax into the nervous system. It's like a man, if he incarnated as a man, there's a propensity to sort of handle the earth plane. And if we incarnated as a woman, there's a propensity to handle the emotional plane and the psychological and the spiritual plane. We're both masculine and feminine, but in every incarnation, one is majoring and one is minoring. Not all, but most men are majoring in masculine this lifetime. Most women are majoring in feminine. Not all, obviously, these days. But if you are, then centering yourself within the dominant groove, the dominant psychological and emotional groove of the relationship, in the feminine, if you're the woman, and in the masculine, if you're the man, actually is a nutrient. It aids the psychoerotic juices.
Whoa, cool.
And that's important because otherwise you become what Pat Allen calls ambisexual, and everything's great except you're a roommate, basically, and don't expect the hot stuff to be happening later at night because you haven't allowed it, you haven't cultivated it. And that's what that weekend will be about.
Oh, my goodness. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I always say men carry our suitcases, we carry their issues. It's actually a very equal exchange. Very equal exchange.
Well, I love that because there is this sort of dance, and women in my family, we were raised to have a lot of the social graces, and there was a sort of a way that you would get to a door in such a way that it's a timing thing, it's a dance, and all of that kind of thing. So, to make it a little easier.
Yeah.
Teaching that to my kids has been a little harder, but again, it is something that is absolutely, it's amazing the change in that little thing.
I want to ask you if you've taught your sons this, because to me it is the sexiest thing.
Okay, please bring it.
When a woman, you're at a restaurant and you get up, you go to the ladies' room or something, and you come back to the table. When a man does this little half standing up and acknowledging your back and it sits back again, I just that makes me melt. It's so hot.
It is
It's just
so
hot. The way they
hot.
sort of get up halfway and they acknowledge and then they sit back down again.
Well, I think that's there are all of these things, and I think that
Your
there's
nervous system is just like, oh yeah, I'm a queen. He treats me that way. Hey,
well, that is a good question or element that you bring up, being a queen, because again, the queen, the king,
and for the men to
thinking
know
of-
if you don't treat a woman as a queen, she can't show up as a queen.
Right.
So there's as much for men to learn in all this as for women. Because you can shine forth as a queen, but if you're in a relationship where he treats you like a queen when he first meets you, but after a while he stops treating you like a queen, that's when relationship pain comes in, because you don't know, do I stay or do I know that he's not treating me like a queen anymore? That's why
Yes.
so much of this training comes from people like yourself who have sons who tell their sons to treat her like a queen.
Well, and also seeing it, and also really, really seeing it. And there have been times in my life when you were speaking of that, I was thinking of some friends we both know that are fairly sort of famous, and I remember them getting off a stage together, and the gentleman was taking the woman's hand, and walking off the stage together, and they're married, and they were performing together, and it was like, that is just so beautiful, and it just looked regal and elegant. And it
Exactly.
wasn't about anyone's weaker or more, just anything. It was just a beautiful vision
On
that
such a
I still
level.
remember.
On
I
such
still,
a level.
Absolutely.
And that's how you keep the heat. We all know that at the beginning of relationships, there's an excitement. You don't know the other person. The sexuality is there, but
Yeah,
then
sort of
it's
the
just like with your
unknown.
car. If you buy a great car, and you then drive it off the lot, you're gonna have to maintain it. You're gonna have to put gas in the car. You're gonna have to. But we treat relationships like, why isn't it still like it was the first day I took it off the lot? Well, because you haven't maintained it.
yeah.
You haven't put oil in it. You haven't put gas in it. It's unbelievable. And we need to have this conversation and teach ourselves and teach each other, because otherwise relationships become taken for granted.
Well-
and it's over.
And yes, and something that came to my mind that I love, I mean, even in any relationship, but telling the truth. And what does that actually mean? What is my truth? I mean, and that's what I was talking about earlier about the clarity. It's not so much about being concrete about it or calcifying something, but just kind of looking and seeing, how do I feel? What do I want to do when I get home? What is my truth about anything? Because I feel like for me personally, I get so involved in all of the other things that are going on around me and the causes and the people and everything that it's like, taking a breath, and it's like, what do I want my life to look like? Who do I want to attract, or how do I want to feel in relationship with other people? And when I am in the relationship with another person, when something happens, not good or bad or whatever, but something feels in my nervous system or wherever it lands, and I feel a certain way, telling the truth about that in a way that feels right to me, that I'm not feeling like I'm being taken advantage of, that I'm not being abused, that I'm not being not seen, and yet I'm not being bitchy and whiny. So it's that place to find that in myself, that soft, again, sweet spot, soft place to come from, to be honoring myself, to treat myself like a queen.
For me, it's been a little bit of the opposite journey. I'm privileged to have a career where some people want to hear what I think.
A lot of people.
And I am honored by that. And that's the social contract. In my relationships with men, it has been more of a journey to know you don't have to say what you think every minute.
But what about what you feel? What do you
well,
feel?
But I don't know. I think that part of magnetic power is the power of silence. That's that song, Billy Joel, Leave a Tender Moment Alone. The feminine is often expressed most fully in silence. And especially because I think women think faster than men a lot of times, but that doesn't mean we think better, and it doesn't mean we think deeper. But if we go in there too fast, and I've noticed with a lot of men who are at least as smart as I am, if not smarter, they ponder.
Yes.
And my training and my everything is like, I can zap to the emotional reality of this situation in this moment, and let me tell you, that's a professional skill that I got it. I can zap it. This is what's happening psychologically. This is what's happening emotionally. That, with an audience and in my career, that's what we're here for. In a relationship with a man, that can actually be an act of violence. It can be an act of emasculation.
Yes.
And so for me, in romantic relationships, how I think and how I feel is best put first into the hands of God. And then I will know whether saying something is appropriate And even if something is to be said, does it really need to be said at this moment? That's part of the dance. It's not a
Yes.
game, but it's a dance. It's a minuet. Maybe it needs to be said, but not right now. There doesn't have to be a text at this moment or an email at this moment, or we have to talk right now at this moment. And also, if I allow it to marinate, if I put it in the hands of God first, then number one, if there is something to be said, it will come around at the right moment. And also the way I say it. It's not just what we say. It's not just expressing your truth. It's how it's expressed. Is it respectful? Is it kind? Is it all those things?
Yes.
Which I have found, by the way, men appreciate because they kind of know you could have spoken about it earlier, but they respect the fact that you waited till they were ready. Going back, you didn't knock on the door. Do you want some cookies? You want some cookies? You waited till they came out, and then they were ready for the conversation. That's why Pat used to talk about making an emotional appointment with a man. But for me, it's not about making the emotional appointment. It's about waiting till the universe provides the space, and then it can come out as a feminine sharing rather than an emasculating, critical thing. Because men are programmed, and I got this from her also, men are programmed to not want to do something if a woman is trying to make them do it. So what you and I might feel, it's just my feeling, can come across as an emotional demand to them. So once again, it's not just loving, it's how to love in a way that feels like love to the other and is an actual dance of love, particularly if it's with a man.
Well, and what we're talking about, too, is, like I was saying, I completely agree with you because I have that energy as well. And the other part is, for me personally, is getting to know what my truth is. And again, it doesn't have to even be spoken. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying about the silence and the timing and the acknowledgement and the rhythm and the dance and the minuet. And for me personally, it is, as I say, being so outer all the time. It's like, what do I want for me,
But
Sonny?
that can't necessarily happen in a moment.
No, it may not happen, but also just at least know what that, to have some
I
kind of.
don't know. I think there's a lot there, Sonny, because I think we're living in a culture of spewing. And a lot of people say, well, how do you feel? Well, how I feel about it right now might be reactive. How I feel about it right now might be that my feelings are temporarily hurt. The fact that how I'm feeling about it right now might be that I'm angry about it. But all that, if I really allow myself time, might see, well, you're hurt by it because you're a love addict, or you're angry about it because you've got issues about your father. So then you're bringing a lot of feelings, initial feelings, immediate feelings, are really reactions to the past. And the art of intimate relationship, or any relationship, is not bringing shadow figures to the past, from the past into the present. So how I'm feeling in any given moment, I have learned, do not over-honor that you are feeling it at this moment, because this feeling may or may not align with the more enlightened self, and that's going to take a little time. So sometimes I have feelings and I need to say, dear God, I feel angry, I feel hurt, I feel all these unenlightened things, and I'm placing them in your hands. And may your divine alchemy now move into my thoughts, reorder my energies, that I will feel differently by the time I see him later tonight, in which case there will be nothing to mention about what I went through during the day.
Right. And and what we're talking about, I think it's or what I might be talking about is slightly different. I'm talking about I'm not even talking about immediate stuff. I'm talking about
I know.
in
There are
more
two different
general,
things here. Yeah, I
in,
understand
and in that way, and just, what my truth is for myself. And do I want to be, what sort of person do I want to play with? And all of that sort of thing.
I found for myself,
and not take it all so seriously, if at all possible.
Well, that only happens when you realize how serious it is, though. We don't have to apologize for being serious women.
True, we don't.
I think one of the things that my parents' generation had going for it, that my generation did not, is that they did not expect the other. They did not expect the partner or the spouse to be all things to them.
Right. True, of course.
And there are some conversations I've learned are best to be had with a girlfriend or a therapist, and not with him.
Exactly. I agree with that. Absolutely. And sisters and people. And that is, of course, that somebody was talking about it the other day, as if someone says to you, you complete me, run.
Yeah, right.
It's so not about that. And
It's so hot in the movie, but not in life.
And I have nieces who I chat with, and there's also the element of not really, having someone put you really on a pedestal in the way that they're not really allowing
they're the ones
you.
who knock you down, at least in
Right.
my experience.
And
Boy,
I've had a little
professionally, I've seen that.
bit of that, and that's not really and also one's not seen and it's sort of lonely up there on the pedestal.
Right.
So I'm sort of talking about that kind of element. And
Right.
something that you were saying made me think of, I know that you've been around Clinton occasionally. I was thinking about him as when you were talking about abuse and listening. It is true. I have really learned this, that when men speak, they have an idea that, let's say, this big, and it goes in bits, and then there's pause, and there's another bit, and a pause, and another bit. But this is the whole concept. It's 5 feet long, let's say. And I've noticed, again, with my kids or with men, they'll get to this point, and I jump in. And it's so frustrating. And I have now learned to just sit on my hands.
Exactly. And
sit on something and just keep listening, because more will come.
Well, also psychologically and emotionally, it is as important as physically that a woman be penetrable. Mm-hmm. And so I was saying to a woman in counseling the other day, you should see she's married, and I was counseling the couple, and I said you should see every conversation during the day as making love. So that sometimes if a man enters into you physically, right, if you're a heterosexual couple, well, a man, I love, Pat used to say, a man produces into a woman's appetite. So a man should feel that when he speaks, I actually hear him. Like you said, I used to talk, react too fast. It was crazy. I would interrupt. It's rather to listen, to really take it in, to hear. That is, and then to give back. The masculine gives, the feminine gives back. So that you're not reacting, you are responding. Physically, let's say. So a man enters into a woman, and there are these two main categories of muscular response. One is complete surrender, and the other is where your thighs kind of grip him and like, I gotcha. Mm-hmm. Well, that's how psychologically and emotionally we should be also. Sometimes I'm just this complete empty space is coming in, and the other is I heard you on such a level, I gotcha. Nice. So these rhythms, these universal rhythms in nature apply not only physically but psychologically and emotionally as well.
I like
that.
So
if you know how to do one, you actually theoretically know how to do the other. You just got to apply the
I like that.
principle.
Aphrodite, we are going to be learning quite some.
It's going to be quite a weekend.
Yeah. Well, when I was talking about Clinton, the reason I brought Clinton in is I remember,
I wouldn't be going there.
No, well, what I meant, I won't be bringing, what I mean to say is he had that rhythm. He was a brilliant speaker, and he had that rhythm of speaking and then pausing and thinking and speaking, and not that many politicians at the time were doing that, and sometimes he would get, kind of a little backlash about that, but actually his whole, deal was quite brilliant, and I remember people actually learning that they didn't interrupt him because he would take a fair bit of pause and then go in.
One of the things it's interesting
again.
that you said that, because one of the things I learned from him, first professionally in terms of doing interviews, but also, you're right, it applies to relationships, is you'll see Bill Clinton, when he is interviewed, he takes a pause before he responds. Mm-hmm. And I had to learn, Marianne, you gather your thoughts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, you're right.
Well, I like this about the gripping of the thighs and all that. I can feel that. I'm you know what? I'm so excited. I am going to be there, by the way. And our wonderful engineer, Tony, is telling us that we are going to be wrapping it up here pretty soon. We have like 5 minutes. So I want to make sure we have a promo that we're going to be offering today. And if you go to the promo, if they go to the website and they type in my name, all lowercase, so SUNNY, then you guys will get 10% off this weekend.
Yay,
so
10%
please come
off.
and join us. It is going to be amazing. I'm really, really looking forward to it, because I feel like it's all part of all of it. None of this is exclusive. I mean, I actually would love to be with people who are, doing what they're doing. I'm doing what I'm doing. We're muses for each other. We're supporting each other. We're like the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts.
Well,
that's what I want.
There are some other people there as well. Grace Gideon, who is an international relationship coach, psychologist. She's fascinating. She's going to be there to sort of be part of the relationship insight on Saturday, and then Sunday, Dr. Libby Weaver, who is a nutritional biochemist. Because a lot of the questions that women have now has to do with our bodies. Mm-hmm. early, for the younger ones, fertility, infertility, for the older ones, menopause and so forth. So there'll be a lot of that. Then Saturday night, an amazing...
And aphrodisiacs, of course.
All right, and interesting. And I'll tell her you said that. And then Saturday night, there will be a white party, and we will have everything from... we'll have belly dancers and DJ, and then also a fantastic R&B singer from Detroit, Thornetta Davis, who's going to be there throughout the weekend. So
one of your
Kirtan
hometowns
on Sunday morning. It's going to be quite an experience.
I am
the
excited
entire
to know
weekend.
that. You know what you do. Many people do a lot of things these days, and I always like to ask the question, like we ask on Passover: why is this night different than any other night? Why is this event different than any other event? I think we're answering that question already with the brilliance of you, with the sacredness of the women, with, I'm sure everyone is, like Saturday night when you say all white party, does that mean everyone is dressed in all white?
Yes, elegant,
okay, elegant
fancy
all
white.
Ooh, yay.
You know, I used to thought that was I think it was a sort of silly concept, and then I was in this incredible thing, actually, at Richard Branson's island, Necker Island, and they did a white party one night. And in my office, they just said, "Oh, you're supposed to wear white," but I thought it was with jeans. I didn't know it was fancy, so I was totally embarrassed. But everybody else, and it was kind of amazing. So yes, white party Saturday night.
White party, good. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it completely. Good. So now, what else do we need to let people know? You guys know to go to Marianne.com. You know to go Monday nights if you're in LA to the Saban Theater. Still?
Yes, every Monday night at the Saban Theater, 8440 Wilshire, which is 1 block east of La Cienega, at 7:30, and live streaming for free on Marianne.com.
Yeah, which is so incredible. And then you will be able to go and watch the video that Marianne did for this. It's about 9 minutes. It's so great because it really breaks down whatever we didn't touch in this interview, which we did touch on a number of things, and we'll be touching more things on this weekend. And you know that this is Sunny Chayes Singing in the Rain, and you can get us here, iTunes, all the other different things, Twitter. Follow me on all the different things, and you can follow Marianne on her everything. You probably already are, because now what else is happening after this? Or we're not even going to worry about it. We're just going to go to this.
Oh, you mean after Aphrodite?
Yeah.
Oh, then we're going to go elect Bernie Sanders. What do you think?
Well, that's right. And Bernie Sanders, guys. And remember that, you know, what's going to be so fun about this weekend is I'm always talking about the power of one, and I so strongly believe in the power of one. And being able to be rocking out power of one on all levels just makes us more powerful, yeah?
Yeah, and with all jokes aside, whether it's Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton or Mark Rubio or anyone else, I do believe that regardless of what our political beliefs are, I do feel that part of our being conscious women is to be involved in all of these areas where we can make a difference, and I think politics is an important one too.
Yes, and using our vote, using our voice as our vote, and in any other ways that we can, because there are other ways than, I was going to say just a vote, but it's not just a vote.
No,
it is the vote
it's
and
using
many other
your
things.
entire life and all your social media, all your conversations, just to not look away from the extraordinarily important issues of our day. I just think the Aphrodite thing is important because you can have more energy during the day if you had a good night the night before.
Absolutely, absolutely. That, you know, people wonder a little pickup in the step, and it's actually true. Having that energy, that's what I'm saying too. Is bringing it, so we can be vital for many, many years. Because as women,
until we die.
Until we die,
yeah.
And we're finding that we can do that with the new DNA and brain,
as long
and,
as we're here,
know,
right.
Gene Houston and everybody bringing out all the information about what's going on with our brain, and we're revitalizing all the time. And so we'll just keep doing that. So see us, come play with us, be there live stream or in person, and just you can hang out with Marianne Williamson for an entire weekend. What is that about? So until next time, remember, it's so fun.
I have to do it all the time. I can't get rid of her.
Well, we get the pleasure of doing that. And
Thank
until
you.
next time, remember, this is Sunny Chayes. You have the power of one. Read all of Marianne's books, especially Healing the Soul of America. And I love that book. And until next time, remember, rock it wherever you are. Just rock it already. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Sunny.